Welcome. We meet to discuss a Taurus lunar eclipse taking place the weekend of October 28th to 29th. This eclipse is the second to square to Pluto and also marks the halfway point in our eclipse season, October 2023. So we had that first solar eclipse, October 14th, square to Pluto, as Pluto stations direct. 7 days later, the sun squares Pluto. Then 7 days later, we've got this lunar eclipse again square to Pluto. So all of this Pluto indicates an overhaul, intensity, profound transformations taking place throughout the world, and largely through a scraping of the underbelly. Yes, Pluto Scorpio turns over, tills the land, so to fertilize, but oftentimes in a way that can rake the muck to the surface. The moon's north node in Aries is ruled by Mars, who is in the sign of Scorpio, ruled by Pluto now through November. This further indicates this necessary shadow exploration. Diving into the unconscious, it is certainly a time to do our psychotherapy. We can all be soul detectives for ourselves and another, understanding what makes us ticked through monitoring our reactions and getting some fascinating feedback that can be incredibly revealing, as well as clarifying what the heck is going on in the midst of all of this change. Now, if you do need any support, if you'd like some extra insight or understanding into what and why your life is as it is right now, I'm doing an extra Q&A for eclipses this month, so we're going to meet the 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Check out the video description if you'd like to take a look at your chart, get a sense of what the heck is going on. Lunar eclipse is when we typically feel all of these changes. The collective is processing what is taking place here on Earth. And what is marked with these eclipses square to Pluto as Pluto's stationing direct is this is also the culmination and completion of Pluto's near 2-decade transit through the sign of Capricorn. Pluto transiting different zodiac signs is actually one of the best ways to study and understand generations and soul pods and soul groups, because different groups have different experiences and evolutionary tasks via this evolution generation to generation marked by Pluto through the zodiac. So Pluto's completing Capricorn, and this culmination completion can have this theme of looking at patterns that can feel very old, very redundant. Indeed, Capricorn has this feeling of being in prison. And Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, is the planet that teaches through the placing of obstacles in our path. It is the experience of limitation that actually drives our evolution through Capricorn and Saturn. So this is not actually a bad guy. This is not actually punishment, which our soul is experiencing as well. But the redundancy, the themes of oppression, conditioned societal roles, gender stigmas, taking us all the way back to our childhood, our relationship to our parents, how that repeats in our early relationships with bosses, authority figures. Certainly we can be looking at these themes of oppression, limitation, where we've all felt imprisoned by certain repeated patterns, and how, where, and why our soul reacts. This is the information largely being sparked by this eclipse opposite to Mercury and Mars, joining together the same time as the full moon, 28th to 29th. The full moon joins Jupiter, tremendously illuminating. We're talking about insights, eureka moments, realizations, and this can again drive these changes and transformations. Can be very significant in terms of how we're relating, how we're spending money, how we're relating to the world, doing our career. Again, it's a big changing of the game taking place, spearheaded by this exploration of the unknown, exploration of the unconscious. So let's begin with Mercury in Scorpio. has this leave no stone unturned, soul detective, exposer. Let's look at the shit that nobody else is looking at. Yeah, Mercury, Scorpio people are natural psychologists in a certain respect. So the fact that Mercury is forming an opposition to Jupiter is tremendously illuminating. This is, again, the conversations that have insights, clarification, things click together. We get the big picture and we're able to understand it rationally, left brain, communicate it, parts and pieces. This is, again, as I've mentioned before, a highlighted time for psychotherapy. But whether or not we can afford it, whether or not we have that, certainly it's going to be coming to us through any and all relationships, which, by the way, does not simply mean intimate relationships, or the person that we live with, or the person that we call our loved one, significant others, so on and so forth. We're talking about relationships to be found everywhere. Can be triggering and catalyzing this type of feedback. Can be triggering and catalyze Mercury, a soul investigation, a clarification around, a communication discussion about Mercury joining Mars. Desire, sexuality, we're talking about instincts, we're talking about anger, we're talking about reactivity. You may hear about it, a bit of it in the tone of my voice. Mercury, Mars can sound a little bit sharp. It's like, let's get on with it, please. Mercury, Mars can also be a little bit fast. Can we get on with it, please? Can have something to do with impatience. Let's get going. Let's do this exposure. Let's make these changes and transformation happen already. And I asked you to mow the lawn last weekend. Well, I asked you to get your shit together the other weekend, back and forth and back and forth. And these types of intense conversations, reactions can take place. And certainly I need to take my own prescriptions from time to time, or perhaps always, plus the prescriptions of so many other things and others. But take a walk around the neighborhood maybe before we have that really charged conversation. If you do notice that your tone of voice or something is a little bit more dialed up than usual, that's a good indication for a need to roll it back. Despite how convicted, passionate, and intense we may be, it's always good to slow down, do the Taurus thing, somatics, snacks, naps, returning to our body, setting it down and coming back. It's not actually a big of deal as it may feel or seem in the moment that the gut punch, the reactions, or the instincts are taking place. And that's no accident. It's because these are patterns that are connected to long outstanding cycles that the soul may be very tired of, is going through an allergic reaction, rejection, removal, cutting out, cutting cords, separation. And what's important is while we're navigating this, with the solar eclipse initiating this period in Libra, it's about being careful, about extremes, extremism. I'm going to try not to make this motion so much in this video because I notice all my video thumbnails on YouTube is me making that motion. So extremism, we have to go back and forth between these extremes, like light switch on, light switch off, to realize that there is a healthy in between that we may not be seeing. And putting ourselves in the other person's shoes, and then putting ourselves back in our shoes. There could be an in-between, even what's coming up in conversation. We could all use third parties. We could all use that objective feedback. So to understand the what and the why of the instincts. This again is the evolutionary track of Mars and Scorpio, to explore the unknown, to push on edges, edge play. Why do I have that inexplicable attraction, fetish? Why do I have that inexplicable phobia or repulsion? We have to get into it to effectively do Scorpio. That's why Scorpio has this badass quality in nature. It is the one willing to get their hands dirty, to do the work that nobody else wants to do. It's hidden, it's off limits, it's not accepted by consensus, happy, bright, illuminated world. It goes on after dark. It goes on behind the scenes. There's an entire world here that not everybody knows about unless you've got access to that Scorpio in some way, shape, or form. We all do. And if we try to close off that doorway or avoid that shadow or those inexplicable desires, attractions or repulsions, like we don't have those things that aggravate us, or like we don't have those things that sweep us off our feet in a magnetic way. We're going to end up squashing those things if we avoid them, form distortions, and it comes out even meaner. It comes out even uglier, even messier. So Scorpio, paradoxically, is the one willing to get messy, get into it. Scorpio is about conflict. If we've formed a philosophy that conflict is bad and should be avoided at all times, we're going to really, really experience some harsh lessons here on planet Earth as human beings. So it's not about avoiding conflict. We have to initiate conflict. We have to honor differences, discrepancies, hiccups, where we aggravate one another. We step on each other's toes sometimes. What are we supposed to do? Never acknowledge that? So how do we do conflict? How can we do this in a peaceful, actually approachable, actually digestible, as Mercury, Mars can get a little bit fast. So pardon me, I'm speaking a little quickly. I'd also love to pack a lot in a short amount of time. Scorpio is complex, dense reality. We have to get into it. The more we get into that complexity, is it so much good guys and bad guys, and people choosing to be a good guy or a bad guy, the more we get into Scorpio, the more we explore those underworld places, avoided by culture, society, the places goody-goodies dare not tread. Well, if we tread in those places anyways, and it's not just demons and sinners that go to those worlds, it's saints, and those that want to help those that fall down into the underworld, which will always include ourselves, by the way. We've all got a foot into that world. But the point is, if we go there willfully, this is where the whole realm of Taurus and Scorpio, which has been long outstanding, demonized by our Christian era, society, culture. You know, Taurus is the body, somatic, very pragmatic, very earthy. You got a horned Taurus sigil. And then Scorpio, as we know, the underworld. Mars in Scorpio right now is the underworld. And how we oftentimes depicted this hellish furnace as where souls go to get punished. And I would like us all to reconceptualize and see hell as a place where transformation occurs. It's intense. It's not comfortable. It's the furnace where things get melted down. But the heart of the earth, that hell furnace, is actually the earth's heart. Okay, this is Aries. It's interesting that we demonized both Venus through Lucifer as well as Pan through the devil. And these are the first two signs of the zodiac: Mars, Venus, Aries, Taurus. We are actually illuminating animal wisdom. The gut instincts, the reactivity is not something to be avoided. It's something to be embraced. Do we have to learn to harness that earth heart energy in order to use that intensity in the most effective way so we don't burn things down, but can actually use that to construct and create? Yes, that takes real skill and experience and training, and that's the training we're all getting these days, is it not? This is the necessary exploration. Mars and Scorpio, get down, get dirty, get into the complexity, leave no stone unturned, get it up to the surface. Don't sweep it to the side so it comes out in weird, distorted, painful ways. We're going to follow these reactions down to their roots. And again, Mercury opposite to Jupiter. Mercury-Jupiter opposition. We get this once a year. If there's a retrograde, sometimes more than once a year. But this is a time where there's this tremendous illumination, connection of big picture perspective with what it is that we're working with, the parts and pieces at hand, following that eruption or that reactivity down to the fuse. What caused that? What are the parts and pieces? It goes all the way back to the last relationship, or back to childhood, or what we saw and experienced in past lifetimes even. That's why Scorpio turns into an archetypal symbolic language. These attractions or repulsions are going to lead us into actual needs, even if it seems really distorted or silly on the surface. You may, Mars and Scorpio, again, can be edge play. And I don't know if you've ever peered upon the world of kink, but if you ever have, you've probably gotten the sense that it gets pretty far out there in the world of sexual expression, what people are attracted to. And wow, it's a psychological heyday. If you're a therapist, certainly there's a lot of wonderful exploration, pioneering, and discovering to happen in this realm. So to understand what is humanity and what's going on in this world. But it's a symbolic, archetypal thing, like when we have a phobia and we're running away from this inexplicable fear. Well, we have to follow that thread to the archetypal symbolic why. And that can be very profound. And then when we understand that why, we may be able to provide something that changes that dynamic, so we no longer are possessed by that fear, or we have to live in a hiding out, sheltered type of way. Certainly now we're being invited out of this sheltered behavior. We're being out of these extremist ways of reacting so we can actually carve a new way. That's what's required. We have to listen to the instincts while not getting so extremely swept off our feet that we defeat the whole reason as to why we have anger or reactivity in the first place. It's to cause a transformation. Something has to go. Something has to be moved. And when we create that boundary or do that movement, allow for that transformation, then we can reevaluate, and it's probably not actually running away from a tiger or a bear or protecting ourselves from an evil villain. But in the moment of charge, we don't rationally, conceptually understand that. We just know, get the fuck away from me. Ew, get the fuck away from me. And we don't necessarily want that to be how we come off, or we start this chemical reaction of triggering each other and going into this downward spiral. What we want to do is follow the roots back to the origin, be each other's therapists, and then learn what we can provide for one another. And this is going to lead me into some of how I'll wrap up this particular eclipse. Then we'll mention some of Saturn stationing in Pisces. So this is the second eclipse ruled by Venus. So much emphasis on relationship, money, and again, not just intimate relationship, but how, and we're doing exchange, any and all. Is this reciprocal? Is this fair? Venus and Virgo trine this eclipse can be the opportunity to understand this. Well, you've had this reaction in response. That's revealing who you are, what you value, what you're like, your sense of taste. And that's also a part of your service. You know, it's like how professional football players hopefully didn't just get there by being forced by their parents, but they actually have a passion to play that sport. We're all learning what these passions are. It somewhat comes out of the makeup of who we already are, a sense of taste that's already there. This is Taurus stuff. I am the way that I am. I just like this because I like this. So we've got to honor that in each our own way. And this reactivity, allergic reactions, it's breaking out of these conditioned societal roles, Pluto and Capricorn, that have traditionally been highly restrictive and oppressive. Easy, obvious example is gender stigma. Or you're a woman, be Betty Crocker, or you're a man, be Marlboro Man, as Jeff Green would say. So no, those are extremely limiting. We've all got a unique sense of taste. The allergic reactions are informing us of what that is. And then you're a liver, you got liver function. You're a heart, you got heart function. Okay, what does the heart need to feel really good, Taurus? How can we fill you up? And maybe, you know, the heart's sending blood to the liver's helping detox the heart and the blood, right? So we've got now the honoring of our differences and also a symbiotic exchange. This, by the way, is not being served to us on a silver platter. We have to be the soul detective that's willing to get down dirty, have the difficult conversations, go back and forth enough times to effectively get there. Oh, okay. Saturn is stationing the first degree of Pisces around the same time, November 4th. Now, in this several-week period, this draws significant attention to Saturn, whose stationing in Pisces wants to take the big picture perspective seriously. It's not just about envisioning, it's not just about dreaming. These fantasies can be getting tested. Again, Saturn teaches through limitation and obstacles. So if we're the typical Pisces daydreamer, swimming, envisioning person who, you know, has this sense of a big window to the imagination, say, in the ceiling, Saturn may create this sense of a cloud going over that window right now. And it's like, oh, where'd the sun go? And where's that inspiration and what are we doing right now? And it's inviting us to look at the task at hand, the pragmatic. How do we actually build our dreams into reality step by step? Who are the people? What are the needed resources? This is what's largely being illuminated. And I've talked about Scorpio-Taurus polarity. All of 2022, the moon's nodes were in this polarity. And so this full moon can also be illuminating, again, some of what's old is the solar eclipse on the south node, Pluto culminating the 2 decades of Capricorn, and then this eclipse is looking at the last, couple of years, the north nodes in Taurus. And those who've been tuned into me through these years, you may remember me talking about the pragmaticism of this and how it's not necessarily super idealistic or romantic, but who cares? It works. That's some of transiting out of this overly idealistic Christian savior complex, princess needing to be saved from castle, woman needing to nurse the poor, war-torn veteran back to health. These old roles and past lifetimes are being remembered, all the emotions, and then, oh yeah, no, why are we doing things that way? It doesn't have to be so freaking all or nothing and, having to prove this or that and having to sacrifice ourselves or be a martyr, so on and so forth. It's how can we, Taurus, get more oxygen to our body, more resources, more food, so we're stronger, so we're more comfortable, and then we're more centered, our nervous system is more relaxed, and we can take care of more people in a very pragmatic, simple way. How can I scratch your back? How can you scratch mine? Taurus eclipse ruled by Venus and Virgo. You need a massage, your body is sore, great. You need some help with the food and the eating, wonderful. You need your house cleaned out, well, that's great, because you're good with helping money and resources, that's wonderful. And generally, bartering can get complex. Sometimes the psychology of bartering is some person feels more at loss than the other. So Taurus is money. How can we really exchange this in a way that feels good? So we really feel good about it. So Scorpio is this complexity that we can't feel bad about it because it's our childhood, it's our past lifetimes, it's how our soul coped by forming structures of consciousness. And we start identifying more of our unique brains and our unique ticks, again, attractions, repulsions, and everyone's going to be a divine weirdo at the end of the day. So we might as well get down and dirty with it. Enjoy the process of going into the intensity and coming out and having a snack and, keeping it all balanced. But this is the real work. If you're in a relationship, this is what it's about, to keep things moving, not to stagnate into some fake, codependent, idealistic relationship. We have that taking us down into the underworld. We're mapping the underworld. Great. What's the snack for that particular underworld? What's the, Taurus, really simple, basic thing? It doesn't have to be all romantic or moralistic or having to prove. It's just put the pacifier in the baby's mouth, calms the baby down. We've all got such pacifiers. Well, are they healthy or not? And if they're not healthy, how can we exchange an unhealthy one out for a more healthy one? And who's the people that are actually providing, lifting us up, creating that sense of stability, an actual peace, an actual wealth, a sense of actually providing when we're together? And what are we doing that's increasing that sense of stability, provision, anchoring more Taurus, heaven on this earth? Wouldn't that be lovely if it were possible? And certainly the Scorpio polarity of stirring things up is just to clear a level out so we can be aware of what adjustments we need to bring more of this heaven reality into existence. I saw a funny comic strip by False Sneeze. FalseSneeze.com is the artist. There's 2 seagulls. And I think this is the perfect example for this full moon in Taurus while Saturn's stationing in Pisces. The one seagull says, "Where do you think we're headed?" The other seagull says, "I was going to get some fries I see over there on the pier." And the other seagull says, "Well, no, big picture, reality, why are we all here? What's the purpose of life? And the other seagull says, I still think it's connected to those fries that I see on the pier. The wisdom of Taurus Mars is an animal, earthly, practical. What you see is what you get. What are we working on right now? We can solve the rest of the world's problems tomorrow. What's here? What's right now? How can we work with the materials at hand in a pragmatic way to increase one another's wealth? So I would suggest you do get those fries on the pier, and then we can talk about the bigger picture once we've satisfied that urge. Again, if you want to meet and talk about what's going on, we're all getting the pot stirred in highly unique ways through evolutionary astrology. We can see the what and why down to the very specifics. So feel free to join us this Sunday, the 29th, for our forthcoming Q&A. I hope to see you there. Otherwise, I will be speaking to you in November. As always, please do take care.